that particular institute has also opened my eyes to the many possible opportunities, not only for myself, but also possible opportunities for the communities that I could serve. So that even broadened my horizon. I was thinking before that the only crowd or the only community that I had was Bohol. I came from a remote area in Bohol. I went to a college in the city. So that was the only thing that I knew of before. I didn't know that there was a greater field outside Bohol. I only knew because of what I see on TV. So
Was there anything new that you found out about Rizal in the conference, in the institute?
the other works of Rizal as a youth, especially the depth of his love towards the nation, was something that was really open during that conference, because in college, you talk about Rizal, you study Rizal, but you look at it as a subject. Okay, you look at it as a subject. But in Riley, we see Rizal as a national hero. We see Rizal as a Filipino who has deep love for the Philippines. We see Rizal, who is a Filipino who studied abroad but never forgot his roots as Filipinos. We see Rizal as someone who used his knowledge and expertise, that even if he derives some of those knowledge and expertise from abroad, he went back to the Philippines and applied it in the context of the Philippine setting. So he did not apply the knowledge according to how it is applied in the countries where he learned it from, but he used it in the context of the Philippines. And that was something that was very beautiful uh, discovery that I had in some of the sessions that we had in NRYLI.
As a 16, 17-year-old uh, kid back then,
Mm.
you come into contact with prominent people, people who uh, have arrived, and who holds certain responsibilities to society. Was
Mhm.
there any kind of inspiration that you got from any one of them, or from them as a group, the Knights, I mean?
Yes, the members of the Knights of Rizal are actually very inspiring. They have this aura of, with full of character, and they carry with them as much as possible the ideals of Jose Rizal, and that was very inspiring. When you speak to these people, they speak with wisdom. As a 17-year-old, you would always, or maybe a 16, 17-year-old at that time, you would always say that, oh, these people must have um, done a lot, right? So um, you see them with that character, that uh, the ideals of our national hero. So the way they speak, the way they act, and as I have mentioned earlier, the way they address issues that happen. And then one thing that is very common among the members of the Knights of Rizal is that their love for the Philippines, which was very inspiring. So they exude this passion to help the Philippines by educating the youth, and they have so much hope for the future that they believe that educating the youth through the ideals of Rizal is something that could really help our country push forward.
Now, was there any particular Knights of Rizal that you found inspiring, that made an impression on you?
Mhm. Well, up until now, most recently, I haven't had any updates about the members of the Knights of Rizal. But of course, one particular person who has left an impression on me was the president of the Knights of Rizal back then, in the person of Sir Emmanuel Cabusao. So he was a fatherly figure back then. Um, and then he was very approachable. I was very approachable. So he was the president of the Knights of Rizal, but he was someone you could easily talk to. You don't get intimidated when you see him. And then I'm not sure if Father Niebres is um, is a Knight of Rizal, but he gave a plenary session back. He gave a plenary talk back then. So he was very inspiring also, considering that he is also a holder of PhD in mathematics back then, and apart from that, he was uh, renowned as a national scientist. And yet, those youths were really pursuing mathematics at that time and pursuing science at that time. Or for me, I made a realization that you do not really pursue science for just the sake of pursuing it, but there is so much that you can do also for nation building by pursuing science.
Uh, Sir Manny Cabusao, we call our head Supremo, Supreme Commander. Sir Manny was really active. I think he was the chairman of the NRYLI. Uh, but I in but I guess at 16 or 17, whenever somebody's up there and talks authoritatively, you think that they're the head. At that time, he wasn't the head, but however, he was very instrumental in the NRYLI just to make sure we get that situated. Is there any funny situations, funny experiences that you remember during the NRYLI?
Yes, there were a couple of funny experiences. We were housed in National Teachers Camp. It's a very wide compound. So basically, we had to walk some distance on the way to the hall from our quarter. Okay, so one of the funny experiences is that we hear so much about ghost hunting and the out of this world stories in Baguio. So every time, usually our sessions would finish at 11 p.m. And then after that, we still have to work for the publication. So we need to go to our quarters to wash up. So we were like doing a sprint every time we would do that in the middle of the night, in the middle of the huge pine trees, thinking about those extra, out of this world stories that we hear about Baguio. And
So you,
also,
you didn't hear Japanese marches, soldier marches?
so far I did not.
Okay,
Okay.
very good.
And another is, taking a shower every morning. And Riley is actually very strict. It's strict in the sense that wake up time is wake up time. We really follow the schedule. So as early as 5 o'clock in the morning, someone is already there ringing the bell, knocking the door, and telling you to wake up and prepare for the session. And it's very difficult to get up because it was very cold in Baguio back then. So it's very difficult also to get
Take a
to have
shower.
some shower in the morning. It was really very cold. And yeah, I consider those funny experiences because those were something that I wasn't accustomed to back then. And then there were also instances wherein we went on some um, adventures around the city, especially during those free time, and we got lost. We didn't know how to go back to teachers' camp already, but that somehow made us become more oriented about each other, and that made us become better problem solvers because we had to find a way to go back to the city with a very little budget that we had because we were students back then. Our budget was really very tight, so apart from the allowance that we got from our school, we had a small allowance that were given to us by our parents for the conference.
Absolutely. Um, Segue a little bit. That's why one of our projects is to come up with this book of poems about Rizal, and maybe when that is published through donations, the uh, money earned would be able to help incur some of the expenses, even just a little bit. maybe be able to buy a pasalubong or two for the for the participants. Now, when you came back from the institute, did you see any? Did you were you changed? Were you a changed man? Did you was some ideas uh, that you came home with more pronounced? You were more a believer in Rizalism, or were your skills in leadership honed, or did you learn any other techniques in leadership?
I actually consider NRYLI in 2003 as a turning point, not only in my life as a student, but basically in my career, in how I chose my career back then. When I went back to school, when I went back to Bohol after the conference, I happened to have a constant communication with one of the representatives or one of the officers of the Kabataang Pangarap ni Rizal with regards to the possible establishment of a Bohol chapter of the Kabataang Pangarap ni Rizal. So that actually instigated a kind of leadership in me back then, especially in initiating projects. Although we were not able to push through with that because it was really very difficult to contact fellow youth leaders around Bohol back then. I was only armed with a keypad cell phone. It's very difficult to buy load back then. So, and then there wasn't Facebook wherein we can just enjoy free data and send out communication. Yeah. So, but that opportunity of trying to connect with people who are pushing for the same advocacy as you have was really a turning point. Apart from that, the sense of nationalism was really developed. Okay, so I understood better in a bigger perspective my role as a citizen of the Philippines. In fact, that has contributed so much to my decision of pursuing education or being in the education sector. So at first, I wasn't really I did not really like to pursue education because for me it's most of that is the most tiring most tiring job that you could have in the world. But looking at the impact that you could have to the students, so it's tantamount to training the youth to serve the country, to become better versions of themselves, and to follow the ideals of our national hero. So um, and then um, with that conference, it was actually my first time to visit Luneta even in 2003. So we were able to drop by Luneta Park in Intramuros on our way home. So it was able to broaden my horizon. So I'm so happy that you have this kind of project that is going to help facilitate or to uh, to help those students who might want to join, but you don't have the means of joining or
Absolutely.
they have limited resources. So this is really going to help, especially those people, those students who are coming from remote areas or coming from small provinces. So um, if not for NRYLI, I wouldn't know that that was what I was thinking, that I am only for this small community. After graduating from college, I'll go back to my hometown, small hometown, and maybe teach there. But because of NRYLI, I was able to connect with fellow participants who are from other parts of the country, and it's when I realized that um, there is so much that we can do as a person, as a Filipino citizen.
Well, it definitely opens your horizon, opens up your um, thinking. There's a full world out there, especially back in the in 2003, before the mass uh, multimedia or mass virtual world that we live in right now. If for anything, Bohol Island State University and the Knights of Rizal invested in you and in your group, and I think it's a worthwhile investment because now you're being a tool uh, to spread good leadership and community service, and I hope that our project, the poems, the booklet, would be able to be a little part of that by augmenting some of the costs of the NRYLI participants. Uh, Lastly, I guess again, I would like to thank you for giving this opportunity. I know you're very busy. I know you're in class right now, like you said. But is there anything that you want to plug? I know you have a Facebook page or a YouTube page that you want others to visit to learn more about you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Sir Alvin, for having me here. And yes, I also do a vlog. I have a YouTube channel called Random Tales, so where I just randomly share some experiences, travel experiences. But I am hoping to feature more stories there, especially classroom stories that could inspire our learners or our teachers later on. So I also maintain that Facebook page called Random Tales. So I hope that we will be able to spark conversation through that channel, be able to spark inspiration. I always believe in the power of connectivity, in the power of stories. That stories could be very random. At one point we would say that these are just mere stories, and it might not have impact to the world. But later on, we just realize that these simple stories would actually create some ripples of change later on, because most of the ideas or most of the remarkable technology or changes that we have right now in the world, they came from a very little story or a very little idea. So there's no such thing as um, a little or a mindless idea. Everything, any sort of idea can actually go a long way. Okay, just don't be afraid to share stories. Just don't be afraid to share some ideas, because if just like the ideas of Rizal before, it was a taboo during the Spaniards, but it is something that we celebrate right now as a nation. So just don't be afraid to share your thoughts, and that's what Random Tales is all about. And thank you so much, sir, for having me here.